Welcome back to Talking Giants presented by SeatGeek. My name is Justin Penik. My co-host Bobby Skinner is not here today, and that's why you're hearing my voice first. He is traveling to España. He's on vacation. We're both going to be back on Tuesday, I believe, with a mailbag. But today, I have the Football Grump, the co-host of the Just Giants podcast. It's personally my favorite Giants podcast. You want to know why? Because the Grump and the Cranky Fan, I consider them very close friends. Dear friends, the Cranky Fan and I just recently went to the Knicks watch party, and that's honestly how I feel like the best Giants podcasts are. Or it's honestly even any good podcast. If you feel like you vibe with them, and if you feel like you can hang out with them, then odds are they're good. And Grump, we're going to talk some Giants today. How are you?
I'm excellent. I was actually supposed to go with you guys. I just could not get out of work to get there on time, which stinks because it sounded like you guys had a good time.
We had a very good time. We even left early because the Knicks lost.
Hey, that doesn't mean you can't have a good time. If it did, then we would have given up going to Giants games a long time ago, right?
It's a great point. All right, so here's what we got going on today. This is basically going to be a mailbag on steroids. And what I mean by that is we didn't really ask anybody for topics because that's the whole premise of a mailbag. But I asked Grump, what are you doing on your show? What are some things, what are some topics that you're talking about? I know you're kind of a big research-oriented guy, maybe not this time of the year because it's tough to be. But basically, what are some topics that you want to talk about with this team? I brought up some things that I've been asking almost every person that we've been interviewing and every person that we've been talking to. And even the highly anticipated Worst Fears segment is going to be back. Bobby Skinner hates that segment, and the only time that I'm able to do it is when he is not on the show. So we will be talking about our worst fears heading into the season as well, and you can see the rest of the topics in the timestamp as well. But, Grump, I want to start off with OTA updates. So I think today, as you're listening to this on Friday, it's the last day of those voluntary OTAs, and then next week is going to be the mandatory minicamp stuff for the veterans to come back. We should be anticipating a Darren Waller decision, hopefully next week. Define the word soon. But even before that, we've heard some fun reports coming out of OTAs about Malik Nabers, and we've even seen some videos. I'm going to give you my initial thoughts, like, oh, it's cool. I'm glad Malik Nabers is looking great. But what I'm liking in particular is the catch radius that we're seeing. There was the clip that the Giants put out today that was a touchdown. I think Drew Lock was throwing it. I did not anticipate Malik Nabers to, even from day one, I know this is camp, but I know this is so early, it's June 7th by the time that you're listening to this, right? I did not anticipate Malik Nabers from day one. If he is able to contort his body in certain ways to get a football, whether it is a contested catch or even the ability to wait for a football to arrive at the last second so a DB doesn't have an idea of where the ball is or where you're playing the football or how to play the football. That's some of the stuff that, from the videos that we've seen, that I've liked so far. And apparently, all the beat reporters are raving about Malik Nabers. And I like that during this time of the year.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I didn't expect that. I mean, like, those are, when we talk about guys that are good receivers versus guys that are true alphas, wide receiver one, whatever term you want to use to describe, like, the Jamar Chases, Justin Jeffersons of the world. It's those little things. And I don't know that I'm totally surprised about things like that. I mean, like, those are catching the ball things. Those are the little things that make him a top 10 pick as opposed to a first rounder. It's encouraging. I was hoping to see stuff like this right now with like OTAs and drills, what they're really doing and running around in shorts. That is the side of the game that they're used to. You know what I mean? Like, Malik Nabers knows how to catch the ball. He knows how to run routes. What he doesn't know is the intricacies of this offense, the wordiness of it, NFL speed on defense and stuff like that. So to me, training camp, if he continues to shine, that's where I start getting super excited. Right now, I would say he looks the part of what we expected. And that's me not being surprised doesn't mean I'm not excited about it. Like, that's awesome. That's what I was hoping to see. But really kind of solidifies for me one thing, and that's that I'm really glad that they didn't reach at 6 for anything. They stuck to their guns when they couldn't trade up for what they wanted. They just stood pat and they took the player that they needed. They didn't just take a position, the one thing that I'm a little, this has nothing to do with Neighbors, but it has to do with the Giants offense and getting excited. And Dan Duggan did a pretty good job of trying to keep fans grounded, I think, in saying he tries to continue to remind that it's very difficult to see what would have been and what wouldn't have been a sack. And, the Giants and getting open downfield, I don't want to say it hasn't been a problem, but like, it's not like this isn't like a secret, right? Like it's a giant criticism of Daniel Jones is just not seeing people downfield or not having the time
Yeah.
to get the ball
Yeah, I don't know.
downfield.
I don't know if getting open has been an issue so much as it just the
play
rate
being successful.
Right, the rate at which we're attempting those passes and therefore even completing those passes, or the rate at which we're just getting those big plays. That's been the bottom line issue for the last 2 years.
Absolutely. But I mean, for today, what is it, the 6th? June 6th, where we are right now, this is fine. I'm okay. Yeah, this is all good.
I think we're even going to be surprised. Some of the beat reporters talked about this too. We're going to be surprised when we get out there for Camp Grump. Neighbors is listed at 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's not small. He's a big dude. And again, taking small signs from OTAs, I like the fact that he is this explosive when he's not a skinny dude. He's not a thin dude. He's an explosive, powerful football player. Hopefully we can even see that power show up when it needs to on the NFL level. There's probably going to be a transition with that. But again, just the catch radius stuff, that's the stuff that stuck out. Like, wow, like even though his arms aren't, I think his arms are in the 38 percentile, 31 and 3/8 inch arms. I don't know if this site's right, but 31 and 3/8 inch arms, which I don't think that's anything spectacular, but also I don't think that's really short. To see that he's able to contort his body in that way, get long when he needs to, wait for that ball to arrive. Early on. Love that Malik Nabers is having a great spring. Hopefully he continues to have a good week next week. Boom. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, as far as arm length goes, it's certainly helpful, but I think one of the things that we haven't quite figured out how to quantify as we scout guys is, it's the ups, right? And you can measure a vert, but like guys mistime their jumps all the time and fail to high point. And so, having long arms is great, but when you can really time your jumps and you have a great vert, your catch radius is gigantic just based on that. So, the product's on the field.
Yeah. You mentioned going up against live competition. We're going to continue to see it in training camp. I don't know how much Bobby has touched on it as time has gone on, but Brian Daboll has been doing way more. Apparently, he's been doing way more 11v11s this spring versus last spring. They didn't do any. So something to keep an eye on, even as we go into next week and then training camp, is I wonder if Brian Daboll is going to accelerate the ramp-up period that they had quicker. That's something I think we should keep an eye on as time goes on, because if they're going to be going out with these different O-line combinations and, there's a lot of new players that are going to be trying to get acclimated to the team and things like that, I'm interested to see if they accelerate that ramp-up period. That really, it was very slow, and there were reporters describing it as like a country club environment last year.
Yeah, and that's the approach that I really didn't like. The NFLPA has fought very hard for less preseason games, and I think we've seen the results of that on the field in weeks 1, 2, and 3 across the league. Not just in the product, but also the injuries. So I am really against a light training camp at this point, with the way that the rules already make it as light as possible. So with what little practice you have, I want to see people doing stuff. So I'm very excited for the change in approach, for what it is in the off season. And I wonder if instituting the 11 on 11s is either jump starting the offensive line shuffle up, or if it's trying to get quarterbacks to see the whole field with 11 defenders. You know what I mean? Like with shorts, there's not a whole lot that 11 on 11 brings you. So the intentional inclusion of it tells me that there is something that they're trying to get a jump start on.
Yeah, I know that they commented on giving the quarterback some sort of feel for a pass rusher, and that's why.
Okay.
I know that was one of the reasons, but also just as a fan who understands the time of practice is not as much as it used to be, and these guys really aren't on the field for that long doing competitive stuff. Even if it's in shorts, I'll take any extra time that Brian Dable's willing to give. I'll take it. Because even, 2022, his first year, they did a ton of 11 on 11, 11 on 11. And it was very early, and I'm talking about training camp. We're not there in the spring. But even in training camp, very early 11 on 11, and guys were dropping like flies. And then they did kind of stay relatively healthy through training camp last year. But I think you also saw the effect of that, kind of that very slow ramp-up period on the field.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. All right, so hopefully by the time that we're recording an episode next, hopefully Darren Waller just announces his decision on Monday before we get to these mandatory workouts. Grump, we'll just go through this quick too. I don't want to say you want Darren Waller cut, because that's a little cruel. You're rooting for Darren Waller to retire, right?
I don't want him cut because that means he can play for another team, and we would have to do the whole payout, wouldn't we?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I want him to retire. At this point, I think it's kind of inevitable, but like I don't want to hear him say that he's ready, because
you're not. I think
you're not ready, and I think like mentally you're not there. It's the rigors of an NFL offseason and season. You have to know by now. Like there are very, very few people that can do this kind of thing. That Michael Strahan did in his final year in 2007, where he didn't decide where he wanted to be until like September 1st.
He's also a Hall of Famer.
Exactly. He's a Hall of Famer. He was a consistent player for years before that. Like he had some credibility to do something like that. And even then, that pissed off everybody. We like to whitewash that part of the year. Mm-hmm. Everyone hated him for that period. And don't forget, OCU Minora did like a mini holdout at one point, I want to say in like the 08, 09 offseason or something like that.
Jerry Reese was being an asshole to him, but yeah.
So, at this point, I want him to retire because he's waited too long to make a decision. And in my opinion, it's too late for a guy like him, who, by the way, was injured like all last year.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's coming off of like some year where he was spectacular. Yeah, I want him gone. It just is.
Yeah, so the Giants would open up $11.6 million in cap space, and right now, according to Over the Cap, they have $1 million. So that $11 million would be kind of huge. It would definitely be enough for them to just get through the season, which, believe it or not, even though the Giants haven't had years where they've won 10, 11, 12 games, I feel like every single year we're talking in the middle of the year, the Giants made this little move to alter this guy's contract just so they can get through the week and pay these guys, which is extremely frustrating. Again, as a team that's not competing year in and year out, to constantly be in salary cap trouble. So here's now the question for you. We've talked about it here and there, but I want to phrase it differently. If Darren Waller retires, where should the money go? Is there a certain position, or even if you have a certain guy that, I think the Giants should target, or should it even go anywhere?
I think that's a brilliant second question there. It says you can make an absolutely good argument that they should just hold on to the $11 million and like to me, there's two glaring spots that I think you can do. There's two glaring strategies that you can do with the $11 million. And that's one is to get a bona fide starter at corner. I know I think Bobby's probably a big fan of Stephon Gilmore at this price, or at a price close to this range.
Yeah. Adoree Jackson's out there.
Adoree would be some. I wonder if Shane Bowen even likes Adoree Jackson.
Yeah, that's fair. I certainly don't. I mean, if I'm a position coach, even like thinking of Jerome Henderson, if I'm a position coach or if I'm a defensive coach that was on the staff last year, I don't know if I fully like Adoree Jackson. I think he's a good player, and I think he would be a fine CB2 this year, but it wasn't even the fact that Adoree Jackson fell off as a player last year. It was kind of the effort that he showed. Just no interest in tackling, where in previous years he has shown an interest in tackling and being a part of the run game and being about it, and last year he just was not. So he kind of turned me off with the effort last year.
I can understand. My effort level was pretty low last year by midway as well.
You're not getting paid millions of dollars to play
sure
for
am
team.
Not. No, but I think the other strategy here is that you can do kind of like a bunch of smaller signings to bolster up some depth. I think on both sides of the line. The defensive tackle group could certainly use a veteran guy in there.
Mm-hmm.
The offensive line could absolutely use one more guy. I wouldn't cry if they went out and got like a swing tackle or something like that. But those are the two main strategies I think you can look at. I don't know. For me, saving the $11 million, I think goes probably into next year. It probably prevents you from signing like a Stephon Gilmore and structuring the contract where you're loading on like a bunch of money later on that you're going to have to worry about or something like that. But I don't really hate being up against the cap year after year, as long as you're structuring contracts responsibly. You know what I'm saying? So like that extra cap space doesn't really do you a whole lot of help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yes, it kind of rolls into next year and whatever, but if your team stinks this year and you're not part of like a flip and rebuilding where you're like wiping out contracts, selling people away, then I don't really see a point in wanting to hold on to it other than, like you said, like we're not prepared to deal with injuries this year.
Yeah.
We need backup money.
I like the idea of rolling it into next year. Like, I think that there's some moves that the Giants need to make. Like, hey, I agree with you with the smaller moves. Or even waiting for 53-man cutdown day, where it's great it's great that this year that the Giants are high in the waiver order again, which you saw what this pro personnel department was able to do back in 2022 with Fabian Moreau, Nick McLeod, there was the starter on the interior defensive lineman for a little while, the kid that went to Oregon. I'm gonna have a lot. I always remember his name, but anyway, Isaiah Hodgins was another one that was in the middle of the season. So you saw what they were able to do when they had that high waiver order, and they were Isaiah Hodgins is still here, Nick McLeod is still here, Fabian Moreau is starting in the NFL. So you saw what they were able to do with other team scraps. Jason Pinnock is still here and is still a starter. That's probably the biggest one that came out of 2 years ago, the 53-man cutdown day. So it's kind of crazy that we're in year 3 of Joe Schoen and we're kind of banking on, oh well, maybe we can get a corner, another corner, a backup corner, or just corner depth, or maybe even a CB2 after another team makes a cut. We're definitely banking on that for the offensive line. Another Ben Bredeson they traded for, but another kind of like pseudo Ben Bredeson situation. It's crazy that we're kind of banking on that, but that's what I kind of want to do because, Grump, if I were to ask you, how much cap space do you think the Giants have next year? As of now?
As of now, not much. If you still have Darren Waller on there, you still have Daniel Jones on there.
Right. So it will increase. Like this number from over the cap at $11.6 million will increase because Darren Waller's $15.4 million is going to come off the books. So that's about $27 million. And then you're going to have Daniel Jones's $20 million in cap savings if he is cut. Probably will be cut. That's going to come off the books as well. So then you'll wind up being at $40 million. But still, like for a team that has so many holes, that's not. Usually you look at next year's cap space, the Giant. My favorite team is $60 million, and that's awesome. Oh well, that gives you flexibility. Giants don't have a ton of that flexibility right now, so I am very down with rolling that money and seeing if you can roll that money into next year. You're gonna have that money available for you, so your pro personnel department can continue to make moves in season like you did in 2022. And also, this year is about seeing what these picks are all about, seeing what Joe Schoen's guys are all about, especially from that 2022 draft class, it being year 3. It's time to put up or shut up, man. Put up or shut up with these guys. So that's
you made a really good point there. I think you can make a strong argument that the Giants have been more productive with being high up on the waiver wire order than they have been high up on the draft order.
Yes, it's crazy. Nuts. All right, that's basically those are OTA hot button stuff. I'm really bad with I haven't done this whole hosting and radio transition stuff in a while. So it's like, all right, well that's that topic. I want to move on. This is something that you brought to me, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say. How does Saquon Barkley's absence change the approach to the running game?
Well, see, I actually don't know the answer to this, but this is something I'm trying to laser focus on. Because you can make it's really difficult to tell exactly what the approach has been over the last couple of years offensively, for a myriad of reasons, right? Like Dable year one, you have you have Dable and Shane walking into a situation where they are doing a full year of roster analysis while Dable's doing his best week to week to just win, you know, but like it's kind of a throwaway year. And in that year involves a quarterback and a contract year. And you have Brian Dable asking him, what kind of plays do you like running? You know what I mean? So like
Mm-hmm.
then you see like this awkward transition, um, where in the middle of the year, my brain goes to like the Bears game in that first
Yeah.
year where they're running the ball.
All that shit that they tried to do in the summer. All right, let's scrap it, throw it out, and we're gonna be a run the damn ball team.
Absolutely. So, and then last year, almost immediately you have the offense trying to, not almost immediately, but like what, week 3, week 4, well, week 3 Saquon's injury, but early on in the year with the injuries piling up, you could instantly see a shift into how do we get the ball into our best players' hands on offense at the skill spot? And so it really is hard to tell what exactly the plan was supposed to be. And because Saquon Barkley was the best skill position player on the team for 2 straight years, and there was this emphasis to get him the ball and put him in space and let him control the game and take the ball out of Daniel Jones's hands and this, that, and the other thing. And the offensive line isn't good enough for deep shots and all this stuff. Now this guy is gone.
Yes.
Now we have I don't want to say run of the mill guy with Devin Singletary, but he is not anyone's idea of one of the best running backs in the entire league. I don't think. Right. So now I think we're going to get Brian Dable's true offensive philosophy. And I'm really interested. And I'm hoping with the Brasillo edition for offensive line coach and getting all these veteran guys in on the offensive line. I'm really hoping that Brian Dable's now like gloves are off. Like, you have this other quarterback brought in as well. Like, I'm going to run what I know works because last year was an absolute disaster. And so I'm wondering like how many 2 tight end sets are we going to see? Like, will we see panic thing, or is this going to be like, on a week to week basis? Like, this team stinks against the run. We can run on them. How much is Daniel Jones' ACL injury and his neck injury and taking hits? How much does that factor into him running the ball going forward? Or was him running the ball really only a byproduct of Saquon Barkley getting attention? Like, all of these things are so interesting to me. And I'll be really let down if it just looks like the exact same offense, I think.
It's such a good point because that's exactly where my brain went to, where I got to a point, Grump, where I got sick and tired of hearing, well, every team, they're not preparing for Darius Slayton, they're not preparing for Daniel Jones, they're preparing for Saquon Barkley. I'm like, well, Saquon Barkley could have a good game, but how many times have the Giants scored 30 points since he's been drafted? It's been I think I could count it on one hand,
if you can even remember.
Yeah, I think I could really count it on one hand, or even during the I think they might have done it they did it once or twice in 2018, Washington, Carolina. They've always done it against Washington. But anyway, I got sick and tired of hearing, well, teams are just going to prepare for Saquon Barkley. Oh, and you got to get the ball in Saquon Barkley's hands. You got to get it in his hands. Well, what has it done? I recognize that he's a weapon, but if we're talking about efficiency, if we're talking about scoring points, it's just not efficient, and it's just not working. So I'm glad that you brought up the fact that he's not here and that he's gone. That is going to transition fans' brains, number one, but then I also think realistically it has to transition the football people's brains of he is gone, so you don't have to give him the ball. We're not sitting there. I guarantee you they're not sitting there in East Rutherford saying we need to give Devin Singletary the ball. Oh, man, what a weapon. We need to at least give him these 15, 20 touches every single game. You're not saying that. So I love that point, number one, and I agree with you. Number two, I kind of disagree with you when you say, well, I want Brian Dable to take the gloves off. I think he has. I think in
Okay.
2022, with not great personnel and not great offensive linemen, you had even Kadarius Toney and Kenny Galladay. Granted, they're not great, but there were open targets. Sterling Shepard early in the year. There were open receivers by the early portion of 2022. And even last year. Guys were open last year. And Daniel Jones just is not taking those shots, kind of like we said earlier. So I think Brian Daboll has taken the gloves off early in the year. And then in both seasons, 2022, they made a great adjustment with an easier schedule, and they were able to just do enough, and DJ was able to work the quick game, and they didn't have a full year of film for teams to look at and figure out what are the Giants trying to accomplish. Last year, the offense wasn't able to evolve. Daniel Jones was basically a worse quarterback with also a much worse offensive line, and then you saw the results, right? So I got a little frustrated. Like, this is a little frustrated with Brian Daboll being like, this is, your quarterback. You should know your quarterback. You should know that Daniel Jones, he gave you a whole sample size in 2022. I get trying it in 2023. I get trying it for a little bit, but you can't just run this same offense and then have 3 or 4 weeks where the offense is in disarray and then start to figure it out. That's what training camp is for. This is what the summer's for, to install what you want to do and not have to scrap and adjust. He's adjusted well. He adjusted better in 2022, obviously, but even adjusted well with Tyrod Taylor and Tommy DeVito. Adjusted the offense well, where even at the second half of last year, the Giants were an above-average explosive offense, believe it or not. They were. So I love that Brian Daboll's able to adjust, but what Brian Daboll needs to do, specifically with Daniel Jones, is if there is a way for Daniel Jones with Brian Daboll and with the New York Giants to find some sort of semblance of success and efficiency in scoring points, that needs to be figured out in August and September, not a month of struggles, offensive struggles, and then adjusting from there. That's the only critique that I have. And I don't think Daniel Jones at this point in his career is a Brian Daboll, take your gloves off, let's sling it down the field. I don't think he's there.
No, I don't think he's there either. I mean, but I do think that it's kind of there's nowhere left to hide. You know what I mean? Like, there's no covering up. I mean, not that anyone's blind to it, but now the results are what they are. I don't know. I'm very, very curious to see how that, you inherit Saquon Barkley, you're kind of forced to use him. It would be criminal not to use him.
Right.
And then, you re-sign the two of them, with a franchise tag and a 4-year deal or whatever in that offseason because you had something good going there. And I really, truly believe that the combo of them with other moves made in the offseason along the offense and whatever could have been something that was worth, working with or whatever. But now that's not there. I mean, they punted on one, and I honestly think they're going to punt on the other.
Yeah, and it certainly sounds like they want to.
Yeah. I mean, really, they pretty much tried like 2 months ago.
Yeah, and Joe Shane preaching patience isn't him saying that, oh, well, I just don't believe in my roster, even though there are questions about that too. Well, Joe Shane preaching patience, I think, is a nod to, we got to figure out some key and valuable and important positions, and one of those being quarterback. So,
but I think that's also him expressing his own patience in picking Malik Nabers and not reaching for JJ McCarthy, right?
For sure.
So I think he's trying to emphasize what his thought process was. Like, don't rush this. This is a mistake you can't undo.
And speaking of preaching patience and about what this team could do this year, this is a question that I've been asking a lot of people that come onto the show, because this is such a weird year for the Giants where expectations are so low, but also at the same time, like, they do need to show progress. They won 6 games last year, Grump, which, I feel like the energy of around the Giants right now is a team that just won 2 games or 3 games, and as it should. They were 2-8. They were 2-8 with their starting quarterback that they're paying $40 million to. So sure. I'm not saying the energy should be higher, but they still found a way to win 6 games last year. And the expectation, at least my expectation this year, and I think everybody else's should be, is that they should win more football games. So how are you defining progress this year? Like in your brain, it's spring, it's summer. How are you defining what progress looks like for the New York Giants this year?
Well, I know it's spring and summer, but the Giants were so bad last year that I had already begun thinking about the answer to this question in the middle of last year. Let's be serious. Um, but my this is like a little bit hyperbole, but it's kind of not. I don't care how many games they win or lose this year. I want to see two things, and they are absolutely joined at the hip. An offense that is more explosive consistently and an offense that scores points. I don't care if the Giants win 2 games next year, as long as every game they lose, they are scoring over 25 points. I am sick of seeing 6-win seasons of them winning games, 9-6.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit how good the defense is this year. I don't care. We were talking about where does the $11 million go when Darren Waller retires. And you could absolutely convince me that it's worth getting a star corner to play opposite Tay Banks, a veteran that's been in the league that can help the secondary, as a group and all that stuff. That's all fine. But if they ignore that and the defense gives up 31 points and they lose, 12 games this year, 31-28, I'll still be okay if that offense is not scoring garbage time points. Like, those are close games. They're losing on a field goal and at the end of the game. I'm okay with that because that's actual progress.
Yeah.
I would say if I could see an offensive line blocking long enough for downfield shots to be happening, those throws being seen by the quarterback, that game plan against defenses, finally you can see like the combination of talent and game planning and coaching all at once. Again, like, it's kind of a weird yardstick, but I'd rather see points being scored than wins and no points being scored. I'm a little sick of that.
I am convinced, though, that we say that every year. And I am convinced that if they do what they need to do in terms of being average at producing explosive plays, at scoring points. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. I think they are going to be better, and they will be an average competing football team for a wild card. Not making it, not even saying that, but
in the hunt in early December.
Right, but we won't be sitting here in November and December really looking forward, looking at Tankathon and being like, okay, well, this week we have the 4th pick. This week we have the 5th pick. Damn it, we won. Now we're out of the top 5. So we won't be doing that like we're doing in November and December. And I'm convinced of that. Like, it is being, like you said, it's being explosive, that it's what has held this football team back since after 2015. 2015, they were, you know what? 2015 was really painful. Remember that year, Grump?
That was the JPP July 4th fireworks year. And so that was the 2015 season. That was when they almost beat the then undefeated Carolina Panthers.
Yeah.
That was the OBJ Allen Iverson game.
Do you want to hear something funny? I was convinced that the Giants were going to win the Super Bowl that year because of this trend. You ready? 38-35. The Giants lost week 17, 2007 to the New England Patriots, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were the number 1 team in the NFL, best team in the NFL, undefeated, blah, blah, blah. We rematch against them, beat them in the Super Bowl, obviously, right? 2011, we play the number 1 seed, NFL MVP, Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay Packers at MetLife Stadium. We lose 38-35. What do? We go on to make the playoffs barely. We beat Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. We move on to the playoffs, we win the Super Bowl. Fast forward 4 years later, and this is all 4-year increments, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
You lose to the Carolina Panthers, Cam Newton, who won the MVP that year. They were the number 1 team in the NFL, had the best record, I'm pretty sure. And then you lose that game 38-35. And I'm like, holy shit, we're going to go on a run and we're going to win the Super Bowl. That's what I really thought.
I remember that Norman game like crazy because that was JPP's first game back. I'm almost positive. And he had that ridiculous club on his hand.
Terrible.
I'm pretty sure he got a sack early on too. And he did like the Superman thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, that year was, I mean, you think, we talk about that 2011 team having a oh, they didn't have a great O-line and they didn't have a great defense and no semblance of a running game.
Yeah, that 2015 team was not good.
Yeah, that team was so bad. The defense was so bad, so terrible. They didn't have any good skill position players besides Odell Beckham Jr., and he had Eli Manning's arm, and Eli just took some hits that year that he was never the same after that. Never the same. There was this one hit that he took against Washington. It was either 2015 or 2016 that I look back at, and it was at home. I look back at, and I'm like, that was the end of Eli Manning's career. It really was. So but take that year, for example, where they scored a lot of points. Eli Manning threw for a lot of yards. Odell Beckham Jr., it was really his full breakout party after having a really good, solid rookie year. He became that superstar. I think that would be a tough pill to swallow if the defense is that bad, especially with the front four that we have. But you're saying that is a kind of year that you're looking for.
Well, I mean, you're asking me how I'm defining progress.
If they do that, then they show progress.
That's progress to me because it's been forever that it was probably like you said, 2015 that we've seen consistent, point totals over 25.
Yeah.
And it came with a far more experienced and poised and better quarterback. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 2015 Eli was good. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I just, I don't want to dump on somebody too much, but yeah, he's a straight up better quarterback than Daniel Jones. There's no debate there, no argument. Now you have to try and replicate that without that. Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully the defense is just better. Like,
yeah, I mean,
Weiss brought up a good point with us, and I haven't heard anybody say it like this, but he's right. On paper, the front four, or at least we'll say three, hey, maybe even Jordan Phillips and Nacho are better because everybody else is getting attention, right? But that trio of Dex, Burns, Kayvon, and hey, I'll even throw like Okereke back there as part of the front seven.
Mm-hmm.
That they should, if you have a team that has a poor offensive line, or maybe has somebody that's hurt, that's struggling, or their O-line's having a bad day, that should be a unit that should help you just win football games, almost on their own.
I think so. Right there, when I said you add a little bit of cheaper veteran depth on O-line and D-line. And for D-line, it's strictly for the depth purposes. It's to continue to give Dexter Lawrence time off so that he can be at his, 97% and 100%, rest ability on a down by down basis. Those three are excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's no secret that teams that are going to be playing against the Giants this year are going to be looking at the secondary and salivating. But I would think, and I want them to be very worried about how are we going to block all these guys? It's going to be a problem, especially with Andre Patterson helping out with the edge rushers this year.
Love that. Kind of always seemed like a no shit Sherlock thing to do, but we always sat here being like, well, that's just not the job. He's the interior D-line coach, and you had Wink Sky as the outside linebackers coach. That's just how it is. And now they're doing it, and they're like, oh, that just makes sense. Have a good coach work with players that you want to be good.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. But what's weird is that it's not really in his coaching history, ever. I think maybe one time, and he was a defensive coordinator for 1 year.
But if it comes down to just Andre Patterson helping unlock hands and moves, it's worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah.
Have your good coaches help any football player.
You don't see me crying about it. I think it's a great idea.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, so we're gonna take an ad break here. Grump, have you ever heard of Ridge Wallet?
Buddy, I wish it were in my pocket right now. I own one.
Oh, that's so great. My buddy Noodles owns one. I've been traveling with him all throughout the United States, up to North Carolina, and then even up to New Hampshire this weekend. And man, he's been able to just, when I gotta admit, I've had the same wallet for a very long time. It's getting beat up. It's old. And, when I gotta take out my wallet, fucking takes me a year to get it out. Oh, get me this, get me that. Ridge Wallet, it's small, it's tiny, it's compact. He just throws it in the cup holder. I'm like, oh, well, then it's just out of your pocket. You don't have to worry about it. Pick it up really quick. And our friends at Ridgewall, they're back with an exciting new product. You can get Ridge's signature wallets with your favorite MLB team logo on it if you want to spice it up a little bit. Their officially licensed debut collection includes all 30 teams. I'll tell you what, I love these new MLB wallets. They're the perfect gift for Father's Day. Get him something that will last and he'll actually use. It holds up to 12 cars, plus there's room for cash, and the wallets have over 100,000 5-star reviews. I gotta get me 3. That's what I want. I'm gonna get myself for Father's Day. Head to ridge.com/johnboy to snag yours today. They're offering markdowns up to 30%. Hello, for Father's Day. That's ridge.com/johnboy. Get 30% off for Father's Day. Get the MLB collection too. That's pretty cool. You'll be glad you did.
Be glad you did.
Oh, you're good. You know to follow up with that.
I know. Yeah, I know my thing.
All right, so we're talking defense, and another question that we were texting before. Well, what do you want to talk about, Grump? What do you want to talk about? And our friend Research Rick even brought it up too. He wanted to hear more about it. Should offensive coaches have a vision for what the defense looks like? Because it kind of feels like under Wink, at least in 2022, and then I think in 2023, they definitely butted heads a lot more. It always did kind of feel like, though, you had Wink Martindale that was coaching the defense, and Brian Daboll was coaching the offense. And I think you even see some of the more successful teams in the NFL. That's kind of how it works for the most part. But I think it's some of the games where Brian Daboll and Wink Martindale clashed heads. Brian Daboll didn't fully love the aggressive playing style of Wink Martindale. Maybe wanted him to kind of take it back. I have a theory that the Saints game, by the way, where Wink Martindale barely even blitzed at all, I have a theory that was a Brian Daboll game plan, and that's why that game sucked, but that's a fan theory. It's a conspiracy theory. So, Grump, Research Rick has kind of brought this up. You brought it up that maybe you want to talk about it. Should offensive coaches have a vision for the defense?
I think it's a really intelligent question. I think it's really interesting, too. It's a bit philosophical. Like should someone who has cut their teeth on offense and earned a head coaching job have an opinion, a vision on the defense? The way I guess that I look at it is that the answer is a general vision, kind of yes, because we're talking about the NFL. So this is the 32 best of everybody. If you have an NFL job, then you are the best at whatever you do. You have to be. There's not that many positions. So when you're a head coach, you're one of only 32. And you got that by, running your offense. So you're an egomaniac a little bit, but you're a competitor first and foremost. And I think that a competitor is both confident in their own ability and they are humble enough to know their own strengths and weaknesses, right? And the strength and weaknesses. So where that comes into as an offensive-minded head coach, again, in my mind, I've never coached anything. So, whatever, right? But to me, where your offense ranks amongst the league. You have to think that you're either the best offensive coordinator in the league personally, or you're among the best. And that means that, and you should also know the things that you struggle with, the game plans that you have a harder time dealing with. Like, every time I deal with San Francisco, it's always a struggle because, the defensive front or something like that. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you know your own offense and its weaknesses and where it ranks around the league, then you also, if you know what separates you from the rest of the league, then you know the rest of the league's weaknesses too. So you have a general sense of what works and what doesn't work and what works best right now. So I think that, I'm one of those people with, from an offensive standpoint, I think that there is a lot of kind of like Moneyball being played on offense, where, the rules over the last 7 years have, I would even say more than 7 years, but the rules on offense have changed so much to allow the offense to score more. And the defense is restricted so much more that the defensive philosophy, from my point of view, ideally is actually Wink Martindale's. I say that because so much has to be put on, pressure needs to be put on the quarterback specifically. You have to take the opposing offensive coordinator as far away from the game as you can. And to me, that's post-snap processing for the quarterback. That's number one. So when you disguise your coverages, when you no longer have the offensive coordinator in your ear telling you, where to look and what to look for, what's open and how we're going to run this play. And, once the quarterback's all on his own on the fly, you've put him in a weakened position. When you add pressure to that as well, especially coming from unconventional places, now you're putting even more pressure on the quarterback, who has been given the most leeway, probably any position in sports over the last 10 years. So when I look at it, I've always kind of been a defensive guy. I like the physicality and violence of football. It's one of the things I love about it. But to me, that's where you've got to go. Right now, the game plan seems to be, if you can get a good enough offensive coordinator and stay in his ear, like, you can transform Jonathan Goff from a disaster to somebody that is able to run a functioning offense. When you can isolate Jonathan Goff from his offensive coordinator, you can weaken him down to being pathetic. So I do think that they should have some level of vision for what the defense is, especially which at a certain point, I don't even care if you're an offense, if you're going to remain calling plays or anything like that, you are still taking on the head honcho's job. You should have some semblance of, a vision, some idea of what the NFL is like now, what other offenses are like now, and how you can defeat them. Some idea. If you want to fully punt to, a guy like Wink Martindale, who is very experienced running the defense, then you absolutely should. And not for nothing, to flip this argument, just to close this out, to flip this argument around. Remember, Wink Martindale was interviewed a while ago, before he was with the Giants, I think, or maybe it was right when he signed with them. No, it was before, when he was vying for a head coaching job.
Yeah.
He had mentioned that he would hire Joe Brady because, you go out there and you get the best offensive mind out there. That seems to be the way to go. I mean, that's really a defensive coordinator with a vision for an offensive game plan. So I think that you should.
It's funny. You mentioned Jared Goff. Do you want to know what you called him?
Oh no, what'd I call him?
You called him Jonathan Goff, the middle linebacker that was a bust.
I did. Oh my God. And I haven't thought about Jonathan Goff in forever, dude. What is that? 2010?
It's something like that. I think it might be a little, maybe it is. Remember him and Clint Sintum? Anyway, we're kind of reliving some Giants memory lane stuff here.
Yeah,
no, but
really.
I agree with I agree with you. Like, and the question on its surface level, should an offensive head coach have a vision for the defense? Like, yes, like a head coach should have a vision for everything. But why it's difficult to really answer this question right now with Brian Daboll, you have Wink Martindale and Shane Bowen, how they define aggressiveness, how they define kind of living defense on the edge, so to speak, but especially I'll lean into being aggressive here. How they define that are two very different things. Wink Martindale, like, of course, you expect your edge rushers and your interior defensive linemen to win and to win their battles and to win their reps, right, and to get in the backfield. But Wink Martindale manufactures that. He forces you, he forces you to play left-handed. He's going to throw the changeup. Shane Bowen defines aggressiveness as, we are going to win the line of scrimmage and we are going to kick the shit out of you from when the ball snapped with 4. So, I do think the NFL is trending in the general direction of, rushing attempts are going up year after year. The Vic Fangio kind of style of too high, NFL offenses are adjusting to that. Time to throw, it's going down. But also, it's kind of crazy that, even the time to throw is going down, but I don't know if the average, I can't sit here and say if I know if the average intended air yards and if the depth of target is going up or down. I actually should look up that to see if it changes from year to year. But I do know, hey, teams like the Miami Dolphins and Tua is terrible after 2.5 seconds. Tua doesn't know what to do if he doesn't go to his first read. But he has a high average intended air yards and a great QB rating, a great EPA per play and everything on his first read and he gets out and he gets that ball out quick. So NFL offenses are adjusting to the too high system. You saw Mahomes had to do it. You saw Josh Allen had to do it, where those guys originally, when if you're going to try and blitz these guys, don't do it. Don't blitz an elite quarterback, because all he's going to do is scramble, run around, and either run for 20 yards or he's going to throw it 40 yards. So defenses have adjusted to that, but I also think NFL offenses now, and Mahomes has done this awesome, has done it great, of getting rid of the ball quick, and if a team is in too high and they're going to prevent the explosive play, you got to live in the underneath, and you got to live with the quick game. So I go back and forth of, if rushing attempts are going up and rushing effectiveness is going up, you need to stack the box, right? But then if you start stacking the box more, I think it's more important to stop a 20-yard pass play versus allowing a couple 4 or 5 yard runs here or there. Well, what do you prioritize? And it's so difficult with Brian Daboll right now because you have two totally different opposite mindsets of, we're going to make you play left-handed by being aggressive at the line of scrimmage, with Wink Martindale with high blitz rate, versus we're going to play aggressive by only rushing 4 and prioritizing coverage. And the thing that's frustrating about Shane Bowen's, at least the numbers stuff, is that even though he only rushes 4 and he has had some productive pass rushers in the past and pass rushers, and we prioritize the secondary by dropping guys back, right? The secondary stuff has not been great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking about his time with Tennessee.
Yeah. Now I understand that the quality of players that he had in that secondary was not great, but honestly, if Deonte Banks doesn't progress as a CB1, and let's say, I think last year he showed to be a solid CB2 while also facing a ton of wide receiver ones. But sure. I don't see wide receivers getting worse in the NFL. I see them only getting better. Offenses are only getting better, where wide receivers are only getting better. They're progressing faster. So if Deonte Banks isn't your cornerback 1, Cordell Flott and Nick McLeod are competing for CB2, and it's kind of crazy that I actually kind of want. I think Nick McLeod is a better football player right now. I would love Cordell Flott to surprise me. And, Andrew Phillips in the slot? Who I don't love?
Well, yeah. I wonder if Darnay Holmes is going to get more snaps in the slot than Andrew Phillips in this year. Only because I think that the off-man coverage suits Darnay Holmes more than
it suited him and Patrick Graham.
Yeah. But, couple quick things. But number one, the flaw, in my opinion, with Shane Bowen's approach of rushing you with 4, and, this is the trade-off between Wink and him, is that when you're going to rush with 4 consistently, the problem is that you have to spend a lot of money or assets on those 4. So,
and they did.
The weakness in the secondary in Shane Bowen's past, I think, can be a direct result of just whiffing on Caleb Farley. Because when you have so few assets to spend elsewhere, you have to nail them. And They whiffed bad. Caleb Farley was a huge medical risk, and they whiffed. Whatever happened with Adoree Jackson there, but they walked away from him. You know what I mean? So that's part of it. And the other thing is, I do think that Wink's non-stop exotic blitzes is overkill. I think that there's a nice balance there. But where the two minds align with Shane Bowen and Wink Martindale is that post-snap processing and disguising your coverages.
Right.
Shane Bowen is not going to send 5 or 6 guys or send, a safety blitz every other play, but he is going to try and confuse the quarterback and isolate him from his offensive coordinator.
And that's why I'm excited for the safeties too, because if they're going to be transitioning post snap, right? Especially if I from what Bobby has said and what Bobby has done from his film breakdowns and his live streams on Shane Bowen's defense, you're typically, I don't think you're going to see linebackers blitzing and guys coming from different directions. You're going to see slot corner. There's going to be a ton of these slot corner blitzes anytime that there is a blitz. And then that's when you're going to see, the transition and the shifts happen post snap. So yeah, that is a great point. That is, if they do have something in common, it is that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I don't have a problem with Shane Bowen as a defensive coordinator. I like it for that reason.
Yeah. So if anything, so I guess if we found a common ground of Brian Dable's vision, right? Then maybe it's not necessarily. I guess we'll find out with blitz rate and how aggressive things are. Things are like with things like that. But I guess what Brian Dable may hate as an offensive coach is seeing, oh, I hate when a defense disguises shit, and then my quarterback that is seeing something pre-snap, and especially with Daniel Jones's post-snap processing. Josh Allen may be a different story, but even a guy like Josh Allen, I'm seeing something pre-snap. Even for any quarterback, I'm seeing something pre-snap, and now it is completely different post-snap, and I have a pass rush that's breathing down my neck. So if we want to put a bow on this conversation, that's what I think the bow is. And that's maybe what, I hate this as an offensive coach. I hate facing this as an offensive coach. I like my defensive coaches to do that. Post-snap processing and making shit different. Boom.
Boom.
I think we just had a very long conversation to reach that conclusion, but I liked it.
That was a conversational high five.
We're gonna cap off, and I want to be quick about this because Bobby hates this. I think a lot of people hate it, but I love it, man. Let's bring it from top 3 to top 2. What are your top 2 worst fears of this season?
2 is hard.
I'm bringing it down to 2.
All right, then you know what? I'm going to take away the one that was my one last year, which is the one that came true, and it's Andrew Thomas gets hurt. So then here's my top 2. Ready? If Evan Neal continues to struggle, and I don't just mean at right tackle, I mean struggle, it's an indictment, I think, on everyone at that point, because you could kind of throw some blame at the injury. You could kind of throw some blame at, the offensive line coach at the time. And, you could kind of throw a little bit of blame at, you got to jump up from college level to the NFL level is not easy. A third year of struggles from Evan Neal, injuries in his past or not, is a problem. And I think it also speaks to the drafting process. We were just kind of talking about Malik Nabers at the top of this and how, whatever, but it didn't go unnoticed by us that they've been better with the waiver wire than they have been with top end of the draft.
Yeah.
The other one, this is a true fear for me, is, everything is predicated on building from what worked on the year before and then making the things that didn't work so that you're always getting better, right? One thing that would be a problem would be continued coaching problems in-house. If Brian Dable, I know Wink Martindale's gone, and I think that Wink Martindale shares at least 50% of the blame for last year. In my opinion, more than 50%. But Mike Kafka is still here, and that relationship is weird.
He's not happy.
I can't imagine that he is.
Now, he's not Wink Martindale, and he's not going to... I think Mike Kafka is an adult, and I think he...
Yeah, which is weird because he's my age, and Wink Martindale's 30 years older than me, but
right,
whatever.
But Wink Martindale, I think we could all sense that Wink has a very interesting personality, very particular personality, and hey, I loved him for it. I loved him for that.
Sure.
Mike Kafka is boring, and I think he kind of like... Sometimes you like football coaches being boring, right? So... That's the difference, though. Mike Kafka is an adult, where even though I think he's not happy, maybe he's not showing it, we've talked about it all the time on this podcast. Bobby asked everybody that he could, that has an idea about this situation. They all told him, Mike Kafka is not coming back. Not coming back. And it didn't seem like it was predicated on him getting a head coaching job.
No, I couldn't imagine where he would have gone. And then all that happened until we were at the Senior Bowl.
Yes. But we were at the Senior Bowl, and that's when we were the most sure that he was gone.
Well,
because he was interviewing for Seattle at that point.
Right, but then we kind of were positioned next to or around some people that were kind of
they work for the Giants.
Yeah, and they were instilling a little bit of doubt in that. It's like, well, they're not going to let him take like an offensive coordinator position somewhere else. Right. So unless he's got head coaching offers, I don't know where he's going to go.
So you're still worried about Brian Dable basically.
I'm not saying
being a little bit of a hothead.
I'm not worried about it, but last year was embarrassing. The antics making their way, the 24 thing on the clipboard, all that is embarrassing. It looks bad on the franchise. I'm not worried. But it would be embarrassing and shameful for some of that nonsense to spill over onto the Hard Knocks thing, because now it's for everyone to see the behind the closed doors, which is everything Brian Dable.
I want to see that, though. I want to see it.
It's
The
juicy,
instability.
right?
Yes,
But
it's made for television, bro.
it really is. But if those kinds of, it's one thing if you're like, look, you got two type A personalities and they're butting heads, and both of them want to be head coaches. Let's make no mistake about it. That's part of the problem there. If that is what it is, and we've moved on, and that was just a bad meshing of personalities, which is what I kind of think it was, then we're fine here.
Yeah.
We're good. But if we keep seeing like Brian Daboll's MFing coaches and they hate it, and this guy's going to quit, Carmen Brasillo is going to leave now. You know what I mean? Like that's a fear. Like I'm not worried about it, but it would be silly to completely ignore Brian Daboll's role in the things that happened last year.
I do think if there's one thing, I don't know. I'm not fully worried about that. What I am interested to see, well, no, he's going to be the primary play caller now. So I guess that goes away. What I hated more than the MFing or whatever, Bill, I hate to do this, but I just watched the Bill and Bill ESP on ESPN Plus. Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells. I'm not comparing Brian Daboll to Bill Parcells. There are plenty of other coaches that I'm sure, like Brian Daboll, have gotten fired up at their coaches. I'm sure not everybody does it, but Brian Daboll is not the first NFL coach to ever get mad and consistently mad at his coaching staff, because they're all grown adults, and if you're not getting results, then the guy at the top he's the one that's held most responsible. So it's the head coach's job to hold the guys below him responsible as well. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. I'm worried about the impulsivity of Brian Daboll. Taking away play calling, giving it back, taking it away mid-game, that's the stuff that, more than the MFing and more than outbursts, that's the stuff that I don't like. Because that is I want a coach that says, hey, we have a plan. We believe in our plan. We trust in our plan. We trust in our process. Let's carry that out on game day, right? From start to finish, whether it's good or whether it's bad. And if it didn't work, let's regroup and figure out why it didn't work. Not making these impulsive decisions. Now, hey, maybe Brian Daboll took over play calling for the second half of the Cardinals game. The Giants scored 28 unanswered points and had a major comeback. Maybe that actually did happen. Even though I saw in my video that Brian Daboll was talking in his headset with the play sheet in his hand throughout the entire game. It was not just the first half. And we know that's true now. Like, we know that video and that whole conspiracy theory that I had, we know that's true. So that's the stuff that I'm worried about, the impulsivity of it. That's that. Do you have anything else? Because I almost want to wrap up.
No, I that was pretty much, it's June. It's early June, so we're in relax mode.
Yeah. So even though we had that, little worry and critique about Brian Daboll, my first worry is Giants, major, this is what I'm worried about this year. I don't want to lose Brian Daboll. I think he's a very good, I think he's a good coach, and I think he has the potential to be a very good head coach. And I like the fact that the Giants have a good offensive mind as a head coach. And I don't know if that's going to come again. If you just fire Brian Daboll, right? I don't. Is Ben Johnson just gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take this job and I'll be happy about it, especially with a GM that you're not in cycle with and not in sync with, right? And we've already seen a guy like Ben Johnson, who was a good, innovative offensive mind, not take a job because he figures that a lot of these guys are just going to be fired 3 years, 2 years down the line anyway, which has been the case for the New York Football Giants. So that's my worry, is that the Giants are in a spot like they were last year. They're 2-8, and they could make a decision to let him go. And I put more or less the state of the Giants and why in year 3 of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, why they aren't up to standard and up to par. I put way more of that on Joe Schoen than I do Brian Daboll. And that's my worry. That's my worry. That's number one. And the number two, man, I wish we had more time for this because I would love to hear your perspective on it. We're going to have you on again. I don't know what the plan is on the offensive line, Grump. I don't know what their plan is. I don't know what the goal is. Because you have two spots, right? Guard and tackle. And even the whole John Runyon conversation of, Hey, he comes out and he says in his introductory press conference that, oh, yeah, I'm more comfortable at left, but I'll play wherever, blah, blah, blah. John Runyon's been at left guard for a while. Okay, but now we have you playing right guard because we want you to protect Evan Neal, the right tackle, the 7th overall pick of the 2022 draft. Oh, yeah, but we just signed Jermaine Elamunor, who's actually shown to be a good tackle in the NFL, not great, good tackle in the NFL with connections to Carmen Bracillo. So we're going to have him play left guard because we're hoping that Evan Neal pans out, but we also need Jermaine Elamunor to play guard because we just don't have any other quality level starting guards in the NFL. But oh yeah, Jermaine Elamunor, we went through it right before we recorded, Grump. I think Jermaine Elamunor has 7 starts at guard in his career, and I think only one of them came at left guard, and that was back at what year? 2017? And so you know what? That could all be explained, I guess. Okay, well, you got to give Evan Neal first shot. Evan Neal's not the starting right tackle week 1 right now. Like, we have a long way to go before week 1. Evan Neal could even get hurt because he's shown that he's gotten hurt, right? So I'm not going to overreact to the starting lineup right now, even though I want Jermaine Elamunor to be the starting right tackle week 1, because I just don't believe in Evan Neal. But you want to know what is extremely curious? Joshua Ozudu, a guy that Joe Schoen has publicly been quite critical of in the past, just kind of mentioning, yeah, he's got to get it together between his injuries and the inconsistent play. Like, Joe Schoen has been quite critical of Ozudu, saying, like, dude, he's just got to find it. And usually don't hear a GM be that transparent about, especially one of his own draft picks, the 67th overall pick of the 2022 draft. Grump, he is the swing tackle right now. Instead of developing your third-year player at guard, a guy that has been injured and a guy that has shown inconsistent play, and even if you don't believe him, Grump, even if you don't believe in him, and Joe Schoen's like, yeah, man, I'm not liking what I'm seeing, and even the coaching staff is saying, yeah, I don't like what I'm seeing, would you rather Josh Ozudu, if you don't believe in him, just be a backup guard or be the swing tackle? Oh, yeah, and the only other decision that they decided to, for swing tackle, the only other move that they made, I guess besides Jermaine Elamunor, but he's a guard, is Matt Nelson from the Lions. Oh, yeah, and he's hurt, and he hasn't even played this spring yet. So I'm struggling to figure out what is the plan, and if Evan Neal is not the worst starting tackle in the NFL, it gets a lot easier, right? But I have no evidence to indicate otherwise, that he won't be one of the worst starting tackles in the NFL and tank the offensive line and therefore tank the offense. There's no evidence to suggest otherwise. And then even the depth that you have after that, guys are playing out of position. I don't know. It is my number one worst fear of this year is the offensive line. And I feel like because we like this draft class, we are glancing over the offensive line and how much of an issue and a problem it is. You have guys that are playing in positions that they're not comfortable in, and then even the guy at right tackle who is comfortable playing right tackle is one of the worst in the league.
Do you ever... I know that you are very famous, Justin,
I'm not.
having never seen a movie.
Yes.
But did you see Little Big League?
No.
Old movie from the 90s. All right, cool. So there's a scene in that movie where a 12-year-old takes over the Minnesota Twins when his grandfather dies. He appoints himself the manager of the team. And I don't know who it is. It's like the third base coach or the pitching coach or someone is going to give him a baseball IQ test with a hypothetical situation. And they get into an argument over whether the guy should have bunted or swung away and why he gave the order. And they go into this whole thing. And at a certain point, he goes, now you've just taken the bats out of our 3, 4, and 5 in our batting order. And that's exactly what the Giants are doing with all of the veteran help that they brought in. They have weakened 3 positions on the offensive line by forcing Evan Neal to be the starting right tackle.
Now, here's the thing.
They've taken the bats out of the 3, 4, and 5.
He could lose the job. And I think he will lose the job. So that's why I don't really want to overreact to the starting lineup. Like, really, the most troubling thing is Azudu. Because what is Azudu going to be the swing tackle this year? A guy that you don't even like at guard? So you want him to be, I would rather just have Azudu as the developmental backup guard. You're not going to cut him. You're not going to, nobody's going to trade for him. You're not going to cut him because he's the 67th overall pick of the draft a couple years ago. And who knows? He's got quick feet. He's got this. He's got that. He could develop into something. Allowed to develop at the position that he was drafted for. Not fucking around, taking away reps from him at guard so he could be a swing tackle. Like, and this could all cut down by camp. It all could, but
right.
Give me the other backup tackle that the Giants are going to use and have. Yanni Kajust. Who?
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah.
Matt Nelson? They're making the team.
I mean, do we think that Jermaine Illuminor is the backup right tackle, though? Like, even if the starting lineup on week one is Evan Neal at right tackle and Illuminor at left tackle, and Evan Neal hurts his ankle, is it not Illuminor that goes to right tackle?
Yeah, I guess it would be right tackle, then like Aaron Stinney or Josh Azudu that would go to guard.
Except Josh Azudu's not practicing at guard, so who knows if he's even good at that right now? You know what I mean?
Right, and that's the frustrating thing. Where, credit to the beat reporters and Research Rick again made me mad, but by clipping up John Runyon's answer to when he was asked. Again, do you feel more comfortable playing left or right guard, and how do you feel that they're putting you on the opposite side of what you've played for a long time? And I like the idea of cross-training Grump, but again, this really goes to Azudu. I like the idea of cross-training, but when the Giants have difficulty even just developing starters who are supposed to play at one position, it bothers me that they spend so much time trying to make sure that guys are okay at multiple spots instead of just being fucking good at one spot. They spend so much time
before you walk.
Right. Can't be half pregnant.
Yeah. I agree with you. I appreciate the validity of being versatile, right? It's a very important skill.
It's a great idea.
But you have to do your job first. Put your own oxygen mask on before assisting others, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, I'm not on board with it. But I think this is 3 years running now where I think we've all been saying this. Like, it's a lot of offensive line mixing and matching. In the first year, I think we credited it to, he's doing roster analysis, right? But now I think it's just like a nervous tick.
First year they needed to. You want to know why? Do you remember training camp 2 years ago? Everybody was hurt. It was crazy.
Oh. Yeah.
Everybody was hurt, so they needed to do it 2 years ago. And then last year, again, where a lot of guys were a little bit more healthy, and they were doing the very slow ramp up period where they would have a couple days of practice, and then they would do one heavy day, and then they would have a rest day. That's what they did last year. Any time that you saw that there was a rest day and an off day, you knew the practice before it was must see because they were going to go hard, and they did. But then they would have off, and they would never have like back-to-back days where they really, really went hard. So no, the health of last year wasn't the issue, but they were just cross-training. They were even doing it with like Gowinski and Ben Bredesen, who was their best interior offensive lineman as of last summer because JMS is a rookie. He was cross-training, and it's like, this guy should be just starting, yet you're treating him like he's the sixth man off the bench that's got to do everything and play anywhere, but he's the best player. And then it's the same thing with Illuminor, where I feel like he is the second best offensive lineman. John Michael Schmitz hopefully will be, but Jermaine Illuminor, as of right now, is the second best offensive lineman on the team, and he's not playing the position that he was meant to play, that he has started for in the NFL, and now they're playing him at a position that he's barely played in since 2017.
And 2017 is pretty early in Illuminor's football career.
I think it was like his second year.
But I mean, like, just in general, like, came to high school and didn't even, like, he made the high school team, but didn't play. Yeah. Not really, anyway.
It was his third year, 2019.
So.
Oh, by the way, that's when he was back with the fucking Patriots.
Oh, Jesus.
And Baltimore. 2017 was his rookie year. It was 2019 that was his third year. Yeah, I don't know. training camp, and as time goes on, these questions will be answered. But I'm sorry, I'm not going to apologize for getting a little fired up about this right now, because what evidence have the Giants provided us besides Andrew Thomas just carrying the whole fucking unit? What evidence have the Giants provided us that over the last decade plus that this is just going to miraculously work itself out? And now we're in year. It's understandable year one of Joe Schoen of, hey, guys are getting hurt and you have to cross train because they just had to make it through that training camp. But this is year 3, man, and it's not figured out. If Evan Neal's okay, then it gets a lot easier and I feel a lot better. But show me that evidence that that's going to happen.
Absolutely.
So, Grump, I hate to end off on a sour note like that, but...
Well, you know, look, these are worst fears for the season. It's June. Like I said, we're in relax mode. This is like, you know, mandatory minicamp is starting the 11th, so it's like Tuesday next week or something like that, right? And then kind of nothing for like a little while before training camp.
Kind of nothing.
I'm trying to not worry so much and just kind of relax.
But Malik Nabers is awesome, and he's gonna have a great week next week. Grump, thank you for joining us. The Just Giants podcast. You can find the link to their YouTube and also Apple, Spotify. We're going to put everything in the description for you. Please go check out the Just Giants podcast. What day of the week do you usually release episodes?
We're heading into silly season, but it's usually Tuesday mornings. And then once the season picks up and we have games, we do twice a week. So it'll be Tuesday morning will be our review game. And then Friday morning is previewing the next week's matchup.
I love it. Thank you for joining us. I always hate ending podcasts because I never know how to do it. So I'll end it like Bobby Skinner does. So we'll see you on Tuesday. Probably going to be doing a mailbag. There's a mailbag tweet out there if you want to ask us a question. And until then, let's go Big Blue.